I'm driving. I've got such an overwhelming feeling of coziness. I feel like I'm home. It's such a small, cozy car like my grandmother had in the 60s. She told me how they drove it to the seaside, to Crimea. It makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck. I'm dying thinking of driving this for so long. But they drove such a small elephant for such a long distance. Nevertheless, the visibility through this small windshield is quite nice. It's worse through the left and right windows because there are no driver and passenger mirrors, but it's better through the windshield. The hood with the small flag is like a gun sight. There's no sense in looking through the rear-view mirror. The top speed is only 90 kilometers per hour. Believe me, this car can speed up to 90 kilometers per hour because it has one small secret. This model, the Moskvich 400, has an interesting story. Almost nobody knows about it. There are lots of myths and loose adaptations connected to this car. That's why I'm going to present you a kind of compilation of facts, but I'm not going to say they are 100% true. It was long ago, the great country, the great nation won the murderous war. The nation and its allies as one union broke the back of the Nazi Hydra. They got a part of Berlin where there was an Opel factory which had already been smashed to bits. In a moment, the Russians came and said, and that was an American version. The truth here is only that the Russians came. So they came and said, we need to take everything out of the Russelheim factory. We're going to make a national car. No questions. The Yankees said, we have already bombed everything in there. There was almost nothing when the Soviet engineers started remaking and renewing the project Opel Kadett K38. In Russia, this car got another name, the Moskvich 400. There was a number of concerns cooperating with Opel, and fortunately, not all of them were destroyed by the war. So needed elements were found here and there. Some design drawings were found as well. In particular, some equipment for body welding and a door manufacturing jig escaped ruin. They also found a few existing cars, but there was still a lot to do to put this puzzle together and literally make a car from scratch. First, they needed to learn many things, and second, they needed to reconstruct the equipment to produce the parts. And understand, German engineers worked on its reconstruction under Russian supervision in Germany. All documents were sent to the USSR, and then in the USSR, all of the equipment was manufactured. It's necessary to ask the next question. Why exactly Opel? Why not a more serious car manufacturer? Opel Kadett had been produced from 1937 until 1940. The car was technologically simple to produce and reliable. Moreover, development of civilian technological equipment stood still during the war. That's why Opel was a modern car. You also haven't seen the German buckets that they had been producing for themselves in those days. So, all preparations were made, and the car was sent into production only in 12 months. The first Moskvich 400 was produced at the Factory of Small Cars in 1946. We'll omit all the Stalin stories, but from now on, the Soviet citizen could own a real iron car. It featured a unibody. In those days, it was an oddity for many auto manufacturers because all of them were producing cars on frames and didn't want to give that up. And now we had a real four-door sedan. Yes, it was small. The width was only 117 centimeters, length 386 centimeters, height 155 centimeters. But it was a national car. Soviet people could buy it for 89,000 rubles. In 1954, we would see the Model 401 produced, but in only a few years it would be taken out of production. During this time, it was modernized and improved, and a new people's vehicle, the 402, was prepared for production. A new type of engine was installed, and the 401B soon became the 402. Today, people would say that it was a transitional automobile model. Notice the ragged hood strap. Usually it was taken off to open the hood wider. It had a 4-cylinder petrol engine with an engine displacement of 1,220 cubic centimeters. Moreover, the engine produced not 26 but 35 horsepower at 1,200 RPMs. Maximum torque was 69 newtons at 2,400 RPMs. The back seat is soft, as if it was produced in Europe. Everything here is cloth-lined, the doors, the headliner is velvet. And the smell, it can't be compared. By the way, what about the car's trunk? It's not spacious, of course, but it could be useful at a wedding ceremony. It would definitely be difficult to take everything out of here.
Все проблематично.
This guy knows how to make money. This was a simplified construction process, and many manufacturers wanted to do the same but were unsuccessful. That's why a spare tire was attached to the body. It was easier to access. Also, its 31-liter tank hung right under the rear of the car and was this company's trademark for many years. You've already noticed that this door does not open correctly. But look at the size of the door hinge. It's huge. And now I'll show you why these cars are often called elephants. A bit about the suspension. A rear suspension is leaf-sprung, solid axle, and the front suspension is not a Zhiguli. It's independent, also called a Dubonnet suspension. There is one interesting feature of the suspension. Its placement of the springs and shocks in the main steel body, nicknamed the piglet. The suspension arm comes out of it, so the box, arms, springs, and shocks rotate on a caster angle along with the wheels. This construction does not require a wheel camber adjustment. The springs of the suspension are placed into cylinders and turn along with the wheels. I don't know if you'll get it, but may Alta Vista be with you. Alta Vista. Even the raven gets it. I'm so over the hill. Thank you. See this dashboard in the middle? This is done so your spouse can monitor your driving speed. 2 glove compartments. One is for your spouse, your beloved, and the other is for you. The vents. They can be opened and have a retainer. It's unlike a Zhiguli, where you opened it all the way. However, most of all, I like this sun visor on a pivot. It's transparent so you can look through it. What's missing? Turn signals. There aren't any. The factory didn't provide them. We're not even going to talk about safety belts. Nobody used to think about them in those days. That's all. Gasoline, oil, speedometer, windshield wipers. Awesome. Okay, let's start the engine. Whoa, forgot about neutral gear. And again, this feeling overwhelms me. The sound of a flathead engine is different. It's quieter and smoother. It's sluggish, like life in the countryside. 35 horsepower is a heavy hauler, not a modern creature. The car is small, it's not heavy, less than a ton, but it can pull its own weight. But let's remember that far away in the 50s and far away in 2000s are different things. There was a time when you would say Moskvich and nobody asks, what? What type of engine? What type of interior? Just Moskvich. There were no options. Moskvich, with a fuel consumption of 10 liters of 166 gasoline, a steering wheel shifter where there are 4 speeds and one of them is reverse gear. At the end of the 40s was the beginning of the technological start of a great country, the USSR. In decades, we would travel to space. We had a desire to launch rockets, and we did it, without painting them in the Kokloma style. The Moscow factory of subcompact cars was improved from time to time. Cars were modernized, improved, production increased. In the owner's manual for the Moskvich 400 and 401, it says, if you are unable to climb up the hill in first gear, try doing so in reverse. By the way, these pioneers could speed it up to 100. You might ask, how is that possible? Max speed is 90, but you can speed it up to 100? That's because we believed in the bright future, not in a pay raise. All areas of the country were accessible to the elephants. People started traveling more. 20 centimeters of ground clearance made it possible to drive almost everywhere. Acceptable reliability and unpretentiousness strengthened people's faith in it. Interesting fact, even before World War II, the Soviet government had been thinking about purchasing the Opel Kadett K38. That's why, after the end of the war, this car perfectly matched the people's concept of a light passenger vehicle. Before the war, they would only have needed to pay money, but now they paid a much higher price. The people's lives who died during the war. So, I've told you a fairy tale with a simple moral. Moskvich isn't a copy of Opel. And the rest? The rest is for you to decide. There is only one truth for everyone, and we move forward.